that we have our accounts all set up, and we're going to go ahead and now deliver our first iteration of our application. In this case, we're just going to do a static website, no back end, basically just a front end. But we are going to use a custom domain, and for now we're just going to serve it through HTTP, not HTTPS. We'll keep it simple. And kind of for that purpose, what I did was I just created a sample to-do app, right, using Create React App, and the source of it will be in the linked in the story that's backing this video. But the general idea here is this is a self-contained app that you can type in to-dos like go for a walk, create, and eat more veggies, create, and I can also delete them. Okay, so this is just a React app just created with Create React App. As such, it's delivered through a series of files. So in looking at the project folder, there's basically, you can do a command called, in this case, npm run build, and it builds a build folder with a bunch of static assets. And my goal is to get this into Amazon, serve it through a website that's backed by a custom domain name. So it turns out there's a kind of a walkthrough that Amazon has. It's also linked in the story. It says setting up a static website using a custom domain name, right? And Route 53 is Amazon's DNS service, and that's what we're going to be using for this exercise. So let me start off by going to the Amazon console, and I'm going to go ahead and go to Route 53, which is their DNS service. And what I'm going to do is under registered domains, I'm going to, now to be honest, I actually already did this because it takes about an hour to do. But generally what I did was I went in through this exercise to start with registered domain, and I typed in my domain name here, checked, and then it was a wizard, basically went basically added to my bucket. I paid $12, and an hour later I ended up with, go back to it, I ended up with this configuration where I have registered domain todosrus.com, right? And kind of related to that, there's a thing called a zone, which tells you which DNS records that you have. And right now I've not done anything. So out of the box, it just comes with two, an SOA, a start of authority, which is basically defining the domain. And then name servers tells me what name servers service this domain. So this is a clean setup. So that's the first step. Now, the next step to this process is you need to create Amazon S3 buckets. So S3 is Amazon's storage service, and this is where we're going to store our files. Now, it turns out that due to the way that Amazon's DNS works with buckets, the name of the bucket has to be the same, exactly the same as the domain name you're using to serve for it. So in this case, I want to have two names. One is the naked domain, right, the root domain, that is going to be todosrus.com with no thing in front of it. And they also want a www.todosrus.com. And so to make that work, we're actually going to create two buckets, even though we have one set of files. And this will make sense as we go through it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a bucket called just to-dos. Where's my thing at? todosrus.com. Okay, todosrus.com. Create. I'm going to create another bucket with a www in front of it. www.todosrus.com. Okay, create. That's the first step. And then the next step is I want to, load my content up into one of the two buckets. Now, the one I want to use, let's see, make sure I remember which one I need to do. Right. Okay, so domain bucket. Let me pause for a second while I make sure I get this right. I'm going to actually follow the order as in the document. It's probably better. I don't get myself confused. Okay, so that after I've created the 2 buckets, which I've done, the next step is I have to go to the root domain bucket, which is this one. And it says to configure root domain bucket for web host. So what you do is you go under properties, you go to static web hosting, and you use this bucket for this. And in this case, I want to serve up both index.html for both the index document as well as the error document. And this is relevant for, with React, there's something called routing, and having the error document point to the root is also important for that purpose. Okay, then I hit save. Okay, so now I've turned on static web hosting for my root domain, right? The next step, what we're going to do is we're going to we're going to go back to the main bucket, main list. I'm going to go to our sub bucket, our subdomain bucket, www, and we're going to have this domain. We're going to go to properties, static web hosting, and instead of serving it up, we're going to actually do a redirect, right? And we want target bucket or domain. So in this case, we want to redirect all the traffic to, so we're going to use the domain of, it is todos are us.com. And we're going to use HTTP. Okay, now one thing that's important to know, when you serve files up from static web hosting through Amazon this way, you only get HTTP, not HTTPS. So we have to do something different to do HTTPS, but for now we're just doing HTTP. Okay, hit save. Okay, I believe that's step 4. So we're redirecting all the ones to www over. Okay, next thing we want to do is upload our content into the main bucket. So we go to, get back to here. I go back to the main bucket, okay, which is here, todosoros.com, and I need to upload the content. So that one is you go upload, and then you got to find all your files. And as we saw earlier, all my files are here under build. So this is the project folder. There's a build folder, and I want to grab all these files, Control A, and I want to drag and drop these into the bucket, right? And I hit next. I'll actually just hit upload for that matter. Just upload the files. Okay, the files are uploaded. Okay. Next step is, okay, so the next step is on right, we got to go to the main bucket here. So see, we're on the main bucket, right? So by default, Amazon will not allow anybody to have any public access to these buckets. So what we need to do is go to permissions. And where's permissions? Permissions is here. And you can see that the block is turned on by default. It's block all. So what we'll do is we hit edit, and we turn that off, and we hit save. And you have to type confirm, confirm. Okay, so now, but just because you've turned off the block doesn't mean that people have access. It just means that now you can give people access. So the next step is, make sure I get to it. Right. So the next step is we need to actually grant access. Now that we've allowed the ability to grant access, we actually go through the exercise of granting access. So that's under bucket policy, right? Now I'm going to copy and paste this because I won't remember it. So down below, this is the same document I'm basically following. And here it is right here. So I'm going to copy and paste this. I'm going to paste this into here. Okay, it's small, but you can find it on the website. And in here, you're going to have to change the name here to the name of your bucket. In this case, it's todo's.us.com. All the files. Basically, this is a granting everybody allow access to getting any object out of that bucket. So hit save. And then hit reload. And this should now say, right, so now I've got a bucket policy that's allowing public access, and I've allowed that to happen. So that's good to go. And I believe we can do some testing here. So let's validate that these files are being served. So we first test, let's see if we can get this right. I'm going to go back here. I'm going to first test todosrus.com. So if I go under, let's see, if I go under properties, static web hosting, they give me the URL, so it's this. And there's my app, todosrus.com, right? It's not secure, it's HTTP, right? So then I go here, type in my app, create, delete. Okay, that's good. Okay, now let's try the other one though. Let's see, so we have two buckets. So one is also this other bucket. And if I go to properties, static web hosting, this is the www version of it. And we have a, actually, I guess we haven't set that up yet. So, oh, right, because we haven't, this says redirect all the traffic to todosrus.com, which we haven't defined yet. So actually that's expected. So I'm going to pause the video, make sure I'm not missing a step, but this is actually expected at this point. We still have to do the DNS work. Let me pause the video for a second though. It actually worked as expected. So I went to this endpoint, but that redirected to this address, which doesn't exist yet. So that's the next step. So now we know that we're serving it underneath the todosrus.com bucket, but it doesn't have the right URL, right? The idea here is that the problem right now we have is under properties. Oof, didn't mean to click on that. You can see that the URL is it's todorus.com, S3, blah 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 blah. We really don't want. We want it to be just todorus.com. So the way we go to fix that is we go back to, now that we go to Route 53, and we go to hosted zones, we go to the zone in question. Okay, so the next thing here is we need to create a new record. In this case, we are going to create a new record set. The name is going to be blank because we want this to be just the root, right? And what we do is one of the things you can't create C names or anything. The only thing you really can, well, I'm pretty sure this is, let me do it, but you're not supposed to do it. You're supposed to do, for the naked part, you have to actually always use an A record, but we're going to use an alias because we want to point this at our S3 website endpoint right here. So let's see if we can get this to do. Actually, here it is right here. It's pointing at this is where we're trying to point this at todosrus.com. That's the endpoint we want. So there, hit that. And we leave everything alone here, and we hit create. So if that's working, we can try to validate this. I'm almost scared to try, but let's try it. If I go to todosrus.com. No. What's wrong here? Okay, I'm going to pause the video a second and troubleshoot because I'm missing something. So it turns out that I must have tried to use this domain name testing earlier. And so my machine locally cached a negative response for DNS. So it kept on coming back, I couldn't find it. So after I waited the 5 minutes for that to kind of clear out, I was able to now go to todosrs.com, and there's my app. So that was the first step, and so that's good. But I don't think www.todosrs.com is not working yet because I haven't created it yet. So that's the next step, which is to create another record for www. So I need to go back to my zone. Right, so I'm going to go here. So I've got to-dos, but I have no www. So I'm going to do a new one here. Create a record set. This time I'm going to do www. And it's going to be an A record. It's going to be an alias. And here, and there's my www, todosrs.com. Right? And then I say create. And if all, so now I have both a www, and let's see if it works. I don't know, suspicious. Hey, okay, that did what I expected to do. So I don't know if you noticed it, but real quickly, when I went to www.todosrs.com, I got a redirect to todos. And that's actually our intended behavior, because if you remember right, when we set the buckets up, the website feature of the www was actually redirect to todosrs.com, which is exactly what we wanted. So the end result of all this madness was we essentially now have served up our application with a custom domain name. We're not using HTTPS, but we're using HTTP, and it's available on both the naked domain as well as the www address, just redirected back to the naked domain. Okay, so that's really all we're trying to accomplish in this video. And you know, now we can go out and show friends and family our wonderful To-Dos app, right? So go for a